Welcome to the deep dive. This is where we take, your notes, articles, all that source material, and really plunge in.
Yeah, we try to pull out the key bits of knowledge, the surprising stuff, maybe find some delight along the way.
Basically, cut through the noise, get to the substance.
Exactly. A shortcut to getting properly informed.
And today we're diving into something I think a lot of us dream about, finding those amazing travel spots the sources are calling hidden gems.
Right. We looked at material covering 5 pretty different places across the globe.
Mm-hmm.
But it's more than just a list, isn't it? The sources really get into why going off the beaten path can be so much more rewarding.
Okay, so that's our mission for this deep dive then. Uncover what makes these specific spots special, according to the sources, but also understand the bigger idea why bother looking for these hidden places at all.
Yeah, why it might actually change how you think about traveling.
So if you've ever felt that urge to, ditch the crowds and find something really unique, something that feels like yours, well, this dive should be right up your street.
Okay, let's get into it. Where did the sources take us first?
They start us off way out in the Atlantic, part of Portugal, but kind of their own world. The Azores.
Ah, yes, the Azores. What really jumps out from the sources is this feeling of preservation. You know,
Hmm.
like they haven't been completely overrun by mass tourism yet.
So less crowded.
Definitely. And the picture they paint is all about nature. Dramatic volcanic cliffs, these quiet crater lakes, green hills everywhere, and that deep blue sea. Perfect for certain kinds of activities.
Like what specifically? What do the sources highlight?
Well, things like serious hiking, for one, and soaking in geothermal hot springs. Whale watching, too. It sounds like the landscape and the ocean are the main stars.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense for islands like that.
It really does. And there's a cool specific tip in the material.
Mm-hmm.
They say visit San Miguel, it's the biggest island, and check out the orange hot springs at a place called Terra Nostra.
Orange hot springs.
Yeah, that detail kind of sticks with you, doesn't it? Tells you it's not your average spot.
No kidding. Okay, wow. So from volcanic islands in the Atlantic, where next? Quite a shift, I imagine.
Big shift. We're heading east, different continent entirely,
Yeah.
to a country in the Caucasus Mountains, Georgia.
Right, and we should probably clarify Georgia the country, yeah. Not the U.S. state.
Ah, yes, definitely the country. The sources talk about it as this place where, like, ancient traditions are still alive and kicking right alongside these just breathtaking landscapes.
Okay, interesting. What kind of traditions?
Well, they mentioned Tbilisi's old town, colorful balconies, sulfur baths, that kind of thing. Sounds really charming.
Hmm.
But here's a really fascinating point they make. Georgia as the birthplace of wine.
Wow, really older than France or Italy?
Apparently, yes, predating them by thousands of years, according to these sources. And they hint at how this survived through these really unique ancient winemaking methods, using those big clay pots, the kevri, buried underground.
Oh, very right. I think I've heard of those. So it's like the tradition itself helped preserve it.
Exactly. It suggests this really deep connection between the culture and the land. It hasn't just been, commercialized away.
That's incredible. And food. Did they mention food? You can't talk travel without food.
Oh, absolutely. Khachapuri, the cheese bread, and kinkili dumplings were called out as must-tries. No surprise there.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and a practical tip.
Yeah, they suggest heading up to Kazbegi for mountain views that they say rival the Alps,
But crucially,
but crucially, without the same kinds of crowds, which, that really sums up the whole hidden gem idea, right?
it totally does.
Yeah.
Spectacular, but you can actually enjoy it. Okay, so ancient traditions, mountains. Let's change scenes again. Where do the sources point us after Georgia?
We head south into Africa, a country that maybe doesn't jump to mind immediately for safaris compared to some others, Namibia.
Namibia. Okay, the sources describe it as this huge, quiet desert place, right? A real contrast.
A massive contrast. And what's really striking is the description of the landscapes, the scale, the almost surreal quality. They talk about the red dunes of Sossusvlei, super vivid, almost like another planet.
Yeah, those photos look unreal.
Totally.
Yeah.
And then there's the wildlife, but it's wildlife adapted to this incredibly harsh place, like desert elephants, desert rhinos in Etosha National Park.
Wow. And wasn't there something about a ghost town?
Yes, Kolmanskop. That image really sticks, these old buildings just being swallowed by the desert sand, left over from a diamond rush ages ago. It gives you this sense of nature just taking back over.
That sounds incredibly atmospheric. Spooky, almost.
Evocative is the word the sources use. And they seem to say that it's this mix of extreme environment and stark, kind of empty beauty that makes Namibia so unique.
And the travel tip for Namibia.
Get a 4x4 vehicle and drive the Skeleton Coast. They describe it as both spooky and beautiful. Sounds like an unforgettable road trip.
Okay, 4x4 required. Got it. So from deserts, we pivot again. Where to next?
Back to islands, but tropical this time. Indonesia. Specifically, Lombok,
Lombok. Okay, I know it's near Bali.
right next door. But the sources position it as the quieter sibling, maybe more authentic, a different kind of island experience, away from the main Bali buzz.
So what makes it a hidden gem then, according to the sources?
Well, they point to the beaches pristine, less built up, good surf spots too,
Mm.
and a chance to experience the local Sasak culture more directly.
Mm. And isn't there a volcano?
Yep, a big one, Mount Rinjani. It's active, and you can hike up to this amazing crater lake. Sounds
That
pretty
definitely adds a dramatic element.
for sure. And they also mentioned the nearby Gili Islands, particularly Gili Meno, as these super tranquil, completely car-free little escapes. Like if you really want to switch off, the sources suggest that's the place.
Car-free sounds blissful. Any tips on when to go?
Yeah, practical one. Aim for the dry season, which is usually May to September. That way you get the best weather and avoid the peak Bali crowd spilling over.
Good to know. Okay, one more destination left in this deep dive.
Yep. Our final stop takes us back to Europe. Sort of nestled right in the middle, but maybe easy to miss.
Where's that?
Slovenia,
Yeah.
tucked between Italy and Croatia. The sources make a case that it's often overlooked, despite having so much packed into a small country.
Overlooked. Why do you think that is? It's right there.
Good question. Maybe just overshadowed by its neighbors.
Yeah.
But the sources highlight its incredible diversity. We've got Alps, beautiful lakes, huge cave systems, castles, and a real focus on being green, apparently.
Sounds like a bit of everything. What are the standouts?
Well, Lake Bled gets mentioned, of course. Looks straight off a postcard. Then there's the capital, Ljubljana, described as charming, very eco-conscious. The huge Postojna cave system, too.
Okay.
And this one's amazing. Prajama Castle. It's literally built inside the mouth of a cave.
Inside a cave, seriously.
Seriously, that's the kind of unique, almost unbelievable thing the sources say you find when you step away from the main tourist routes. It screams hidden gem.
Wow, okay. A castle in a cave. And the tip for Slovenia.
For Ljubljana, they say rent a bike. Apparently the city's super cyclist friendly, and it's a great way to just stumble upon cool art, music, cafes, that kind of thing.
Nice. Okay, so that's our tour, guided by the sources. Azores, Georgia, Namibia, Lombok, Slovenia. Pretty incredible range of places.
Absolutely. Volcanic islands, ancient wine regions, vast deserts, quiet beaches, fairy tale Europe.
But like you said earlier, the sources weren't just listing places. They were getting at something bigger, the value in seeking out these less obvious spots.
Exactly. They sort of pull together the main reasons why choosing a hidden gem might be better, or at least different, than hitting the big landmarks.
Okay, so let's break that down. What are the core arguments the sources make?
Well, the first one is pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
They're less crowded,
Yeah, that came up a few times.
right? And that means you can actually enjoy the peace, soak up the culture without queues, without, constantly jostling for space. It allows for a different quality of experience. Think about that quiet desert in Namibia versus, I don't know, Times Square.
Good point. Just having space to breathe. What else?
Authenticity comes up a lot. The idea that in these places, local life isn't just about tourism. So interactions can feel more genuine. The culture feels less like a show put on for visitors. Discovering those old mine methods in Georgia, for instance, the sources imply that feels more real than maybe a standard tourist cultural night.
Right, less packaged.
Less packaged, exactly. And related to that is sustainability. The sources touch on how visiting these places can sometimes support local economies more directly, maybe spreading the benefits of tourism a bit more evenly than just pouring money into huge international chains in the hot spots.
A more mindful way to travel, perhaps.
Perhaps. And then there's the personal aspect, maybe the most compelling reason. The sources suggest these places offer better potential for unique stories, unforgettable memories.
How so?
Because those moments often happen when you're not following a script. When you wander off the path, stumble onto something unexpected, connect with someone genuinely, stuff that's harder to find when everything's perfectly curated for thousands of people every day.
It's about experiences that feel personal, not just ticking off a box you saw online.
Exactly. And the
Yeah.
sources really try to connect this back to you, the listener, saying that seeking out these kinds of experiences could actually make your travels richer, more meaningful, more yours.
It's a shift in thinking, isn't it? Away from just fame or popularity.
Yeah. Judging a place by the richness of the experience, not just its ranking on TripAdvisor or whatever.
So to wrap up this deep dive then, we've journeyed through some incredibly diverse places, all presented by the sources as these hidden gems.
From volcanic islands to ancient wineries, deserts, quiet beaches, and storybook landscapes.
And the core message we've distilled from the material seems pretty clear. Look beyond the obvious.
Yeah, there's a whole world out there if you're willing to explore past the headlines, past the most tagged locations.
And maybe, just maybe, the sources suggest the most rewarding trips aren't about following the crowds, but about finding those places without a million hashtags, where the path is less clear.
And where the discoveries feel like they belong just to you.
Definitely something to think about. What stood out to you listening to this? And, how might it influence where you decide to explore next?
Food for thought. Until our next